This panel is a once-in-a-generational shift to digital business networks. So again, we have Steve Cerveny, Antonio Senatore, and Sophia Lopez. I'll let everybody introduce yourself and let you guys kind of get started. Thank you so much for joining us at SmartCon. Really excited for this one. Take it away.
Great. I guess I'll kick us off. I think I'm mostly going to be serving in a moderator role today. I think this is a real privilege to be here with Antonio Senatore, the global blockchain CTO for Deloitte, and Steve Cerveny, the founder and CEO of Kaleido, both of whom have been in the enterprise blockchain space from the very beginning, which is half decade now, and have a lot of insights to share on the state of enterprise adoption and this once in a generation shift that's happening in the enterprise space. I guess just what you say?
Time flies.
Yeah, it does. We have about 20 minutes, so I think I'll just start with some questions to help bring the audience into this topic. Antonio, it might be helpful for people to get your perspective on digital business networks. What is a digital business network? It's sometimes called a consortia or, enterprise ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a network of businesses, yes, that are, it's peer-to-peer-ish network of businesses. Means that it's the first time, basically, in the history of technology and businesses where actually we can see a network of a peer-to-peer network of businesses with the main goal of exchanging data and digital assets. Now, why that is a big deal? Well, we get into a stage where businesses are going to look at cooperation rather than competition. They're going to look at things like, okay, let's bring all our capabilities together and see how we can serve the market better. It brings insights for the market that they're operating into that they could have never been seen before. Listen, Sophia, I recently read an article which I'm going to pass to this group of people, on LinkedIn, where there was an interesting point, one use case which was beautiful. How can blockchain and AI work together? So imagine business networks. One of the main problems that each business has when it comes to AI, for instance, is the long tail problem, which means your inability to deal with outliers and edge cases. Imagine a network of businesses where other businesses have that data that you don't actually have, and you can learn from them, and you can offer their service, and then you can improve your services, and then you can also improve their services. And for the client, that digital experience becomes totally different. So it's a little bit like opening markets again, and the opportunities are infinite. So definitely a big deal. As I said, peer-to-peer networks-ish, because yes, the aim is that they become peer-to-peer, but governance is always a big thing there. It's always I would say even a risk factor for the success of those. Is probably the most difficult thing to get it right. But definitely it's a once in a lifetime thing, like once in a generation thing. I mean, I never heard of that before, except when I started doing this job for Deloitte, which was over 4 years ago.
Yeah, thanks, Antonio. So this is coming from the companies themselves, and as you said, it's a big deal. Steve, yes. Would you like to add a little bit more? I know from all of your conversations with these consortia, why is it a big deal? Why is the shift happening? And it'd be interesting if you throw a little of a twist of how COVID has potentially impacted this as well in the last 6 months.
Yeah, well, if you think about it from an enterprise perspective, digitization is probably the theme of this decade, right? And COVID has really brought what we who've spent our careers in enterprise IT have known the challenges that exist, that COVID has brought that mainstream, right? So everyone understands now just how brittle our supply chains are, right? When toilet paper disappears from the shelves, or when you get bad batches of PPE flowing through and into end consumers' hands, and on and on and on. And so this digitization can help us uniquely solve these really hard problems that exist in the physical world. And so when you talk about a digital business network, first, what's a business network, right? It's, no company exists in a vacuum. Every company, I have friends on Facebook. Well, companies have more friends than I have, right? We call them an ecosystem. We call them a consortium. In the banking sector, there are counterparties to every transaction. In manufacturing, there are supply chains. And so, this is really, in my view, one of the largest untapped areas in the enterprise IT sector that hasn't truly been digitized. And it hasn't been digitized because of the multi-party problem, right? It's the hardest problem to solve because you have to bring a set of organizations together, and that business process, that transaction flow, you actually need humans and organizations around the same table to solve these problems that we know exist across the board. And this is, across all major industry sectors, we see these use cases. And Antonio, you work with those on a day-to-day basis. So that's what we mean when we say it's huge. We're talking about the core processes that drive enterprises themselves. Salesforce was great for customers, and Workday was great, was a revolution for HR. But the custom apps that businesses really run on, those processes, which almost always we find are in a network of other businesses, haven't been truly digitized. So to me, that's what digital business networks means.
So we're, as I mentioned at the top of the conversation, we're about a half decade in now. What are some of the things that you both have observed with the winning networks as they move into production? What do they really need to be successful as they're reinventing these enterprise supply chains and back office business processes?
Yeah, there are a few things. I mean, in Deloitte, we've always been talking about platforms, so building platforms. So think about business networks, digital business networks as platforms. So the most successful ones that we have seen are those that actually have enabled, organization within the business, clients, etc., to build on top of that. That idea of saying, it's a network of businesses. We're gonna give the liberty of defining what is that you want to transact, what is the digital asset that you want to create. So give that freedom of growing the network use cases rather than forcing through the network use cases. And that is something that we have noticed lately. We have seen lots of network in the early days. Sophia, you mentioned we are at half of a decade, so literally 4 or 5 years ago, where for network they say, hey, I can solve this problem. And that's what the network does. Fine, but that's probably not everybody's problem. So one of the greatest things that we have seen is really the fact that those networks can enable clients, users, peers, whatever we want to call them, to build on top of what is out there or what is there in the platform. So great platforms. And that usually, something is successful, I always say that, when the use of it, use of the platform, use of the network goes beyond what was taught at the beginning. So it goes beyond what you think it should have been done, goes beyond the initial design and the initial thinking. Actually, people build on top with new ideas and new things. That's one of the key criteria for me of a successful business network. Of course, there are others. there's the successful governance. There is definitely a successful and a lot of thinking around regulation, privacy, GDPR, like literally the new vehicles of business network. They call them in many ways consortiums. The first question that is now coming to the table is data, privacy, and even where the nodes are running, where data is stored, where computation is made. So it seems that in these past 5 years, a few mistakes have been made, a few small wins, but it seems that the criteria of success now are clear to everyone. Build platforms, focus on platform, look at regulation, let the others enable more use cases, don't force into use cases, and figure out a governance that enables the network to grow and not to shrink. Basically, that would be a good one.
Steve, do you have any insights to share from what we've seen from successful networks who've been able to get into production?
Yeah, well, I think not boiling the ocean is one that comes to mind pretty quickly. Right up there near the top is don't get stuck in the plumbing layers. Look for technology consulting partners to help accelerate. These are the things that we do all day long. Typically, a group of organizations come with a business problem, and at the end of the day, what they care about is the app, the thing that solves the business problem. And the rest of the plumbing, they're looking for something that is enterprise grade and meets their requirements, both from a solution architecture perspective as well as from a robustness of the underlying infrastructure. And so I would say now at 2020, we have a lot of answers that we didn't have several years ago. Open source protocols and communities have been evolving rapidly. With Kaleido, we've worked with a number of those communities. Just to throw out a few: Ethereum, Hyperledger, Chainlink. We've been partnering with Chainlink for almost 2 years. As I said in the chat a minute ago, we're huge fans of Chainlink's technology, both the quality of it, also the problem that it's solving. So it's sort of a right tool for the right job. I think we've been saying for many years blockchain is a team sport. So on the one hand, it's a little bit of a dichotomy because you think decentralized, but actually from a business perspective, it's all about collaboration. And so that's a really interesting thing. So a team sport is not just the other members of the network. We've seen some big players try to say, hey, come join my network. Well, no one wants to do that. They do want to join a decentralized solution. But it takes a lot of people together at the table, and it takes an understanding about the plumbing and the right quality of the plumbing, but the right partners can really help get you there and can help accelerate. We've seen, for example, a group of global banks and large Fortune 100 companies that we've worked with get into production in 6 months. That's unheard of. We've seen other blockchain projects spend 5 years and not be in production yet. So there is a really big set of a distribution of outcomes, shall we say. Some of these choices are really, really important about the technologies you use and the partners that you work with. And also staying true to your mission, where I started the question around the application and focusing on the business outcome. Bring those unique insights that you have to the table and let others help you with some of these other problems that we've seen over and over again.
Thanks, Steve. I guess the final question is really looking at predictions for enterprise blockchain in the next year and even more broadly into the next decade. I know Deloitte does a lot of research on this, Antonio, so I don't know if you have a few thoughts to share on that topic. And
there is our Deloitte survey, which is published for everyone to see. But I want to say something we've been seeing in the past few months, and it goes with what Steve said a few minutes ago. supply chain is going to be a big play. It's digitalization of physical assets, tracking, understanding where your supply is, where everything is, where everything comes from, along with carbon footprint, is going to be the thing of the next few years, between now and 5 years, accelerated by COVID, of course. I mean, we have seen an acceleration which is immense, and that's because you no longer want to see the toilet paper not on the shelves. And it's simple. And yet, Steve, and Sophia, this is something we've been talking about with clients for many years now, that our supply chain was broken because there were all silo systems with lots of batch jobs running everywhere.
Yeah.
And say, yeah, but I have a handle, on it. I know where my things is. I receive a report every week or so, and yet it's a report that is made up of nothing. It's data. And you don't really know. So that's going to be the biggest one now because of COVID. Definitely an acceleration that I would have thought would have happened in 10 years. 5 to 10 is probably 1 to 5 or even less. 1 to 2, 1 to 3. Of course, reorganizing supply chain is work for many years. There's digital twins. There's a lot of things to be done there. So it's an immense type of work. Another one that we're going to see definitely more adoption in public sector. Again, COVID will probably force self-sovereign data and digital identity because traveling in the next few years will probably become a different thing, and even participating to events or etc. So digital identity may become a big play with self-sovereign data, really, and of course decentralized finance. And digital assets in general. That word will take off, but that's probably for more for the 10 years part of your questions, Sophia.
Thanks for your predictions and some of the insights and trends. Steve, bring us home with your thoughts on some predictions for the next year and beyond.
Yeah, well, we've been told directly from people in industries that COVID is bringing a 10-year acceleration to their digital transformation strategy. So I'm not sure that's a prediction. I think that's happening right in front of our eyes. I think increasingly companies are turning to decentralized infrastructure and technology like blockchain technology. So I think I'll wrap up my final thoughts with a prediction in that space. And just share with everyone watching here what we're hearing from our clients, which is no more POCs, and the projects that they've started, they're under tremendous pressure to get those into production. So we're seeing that as well. I predict in the next year that we're going to see a lot more of these applications going live in production. And, I think what was really interesting is, a lot of these systems in phase 1 of production, they really run alongside the legacy systems. I predict in the years after, this year, the next couple of years, we're going to start to see those legacy systems shut down. And then I think you really see the hockey stick of enterprise adoption and blockchain take off.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Antonio.
Thank you, Sophia.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.